back to the Gridiron Expert. We are starting to reach some of the ranked versus ranked matchups of this 2018 bowl season, but first we have to break down what should be an intriguing Big Ten versus SEC matchup in the Music City Bowl. We have Purdue taking on Auburn, and we're going to start off with the Boilermakers here, and you have to give a lot of credit to what Jeff Brom has done with this Purdue program. He took them over as a very struggling program, but has gotten them to a bowl game in each of his first 2 years as head coach. And I know there was a lot of speculation that Brom might leave to take the Louisville head coaching job, and he denied all those allegations. He is going to stay put with Purdue, and what a fantastic job he has done there, getting them to another 6-6 mark this season. But it wasn't easy getting there. Purdue, in my opinion, has been a very inconsistent team, and that's going to be key here in this Music City Bowl is which Purdue team is going to show up. They started off the season 0-3, and many people called them one of the best 0-3 teams in the nation because all of those losses were by very narrow margins. They just couldn't seem to get the job done. Narrow loss to Missouri, a narrow loss to Northwestern to kick off the season, then losing at home to Eastern Michigan, a game they certainly should not have lost. Then they won 4 straight games. That included wins against a ranked Boston College team, who they blew out, and also blowing out Ohio State, who by a score of 49-20. And Ohio State ranked, I think, number 2 in the nation at the time. So, but right after that, they went back and lost to Michigan State 23-13. Lost 3 of their last 5 games, including a 31-point loss to Minnesota, who ends up being better than we thought they were going to be, blowing out Georgia Tech in their bowl game 34-10. But nonetheless, which Purdue team is going to show up here against an Auburn team that has certainly struggled this year as well. And I would like to mention also that Purdue couldn't clinch bowl eligibility until the season finale. It took a 28-21 win over Indiana to clinch bowl eligibility. That was a winner-take-all game against the Hoosiers there in the season finale. Big star players for Purdue here. Jeff Brom doing fantastic jobs with his quarterbacks. We've seen it in the past. We've seen it what he's done here at Purdue with Elijah Sindelar and David Blow, who will be the starting quarterback going in to this bowl game. He's thrown for over 3,500 yards on the year, 25 touchdowns, and just 8 interceptions. So fantastic quarterback play out of Blow here. He's a senior wanting to go out with another bowl win. If you remember, he did not play in the bowl game last year against Arizona. He was injured for that game, so he's back as starter. Going to hopefully do a fantastic job against an Auburn defense that's been fairly steady this season despite the disappointing year. But the X factor, in my opinion, for this game against Auburn, if Purdue wants to clinch a 7-6 season, wants to clinch a winning record for the 2018 campaign, they're going to have a big day at a freshman sensation, Rondale Moore. He is the X factor in this Music City Bowl. 103 receptions, first off, 1,164 yards, and 12 touchdowns. That's all through the air, of course, as being a wide receiver. He's extremely, extremely fast. So he's put up all those stats, and will he be able to perform against an Auburn defense that allows just 19.6 points per game? Now, I think if Purdue wants to generate any sort of success on the offensive side of the ball, they're going to have to get to Rondale Moore, but Gus Malzahn's going to have his guys ready to hone in on him and try to shut him down. Moving over here to Auburn, they're 1-4 in bowl games under Gus Malzahn, and obviously a very disappointing way to end the year. Last year, they lost the SEC championship to Georgia, lost in their bowl game to Central Florida, and this was the year that many thought, with all the returning starters Auburn had, might be the year that the Tigers could compete against Alabama again. They did beat the Tide last year, but should be the biggest threat to Alabama in the SEC West, and they really just laid a major goose egg this year, going 7-5, 3-5 in SEC play, and 7 times this season they've been held to 24 points or less. And many people thought this would be a year that Auburn would be one of the more dynamic offenses in the SEC, especially led by a star quarterback in Jarrett Stidham, who has declared for the NFL draft, but yet will be playing in this Music City Bowl, trying to improve that draft stock a little bit. And Stidham not having a bad year by any means, but not having as good of a year as we thought. A little over 2,400 yards on the year through the air and just 13 touchdowns. So will he be able to get some production against a Purdue defense? That's not bad by any means, but certainly nothing to be extremely afraid of by any means whatsoever. So will Stidham be able to come in here and improve his draft stock, much like Daniel Jones did against Temple in his final bowl game? Daniel Jones, a quarterback that was kind of borderline first round, second round, and went off and threw, I think, for 5 touchdowns against that Temple team. So can Jarrett Stidham have a similar performance, much like Daniel Jones did at Duke? Something's got to give here in this Music City Bowl. Purdue is averaging 31.9 points per game. Auburn's only allowing 19.6 points per game. So something's going to give. Purdue's either going to continue that success or Auburn's going to shut them down. I think in the end, though, Gus Malzahn gets a huge win for this Auburn team, clinches an 8-win season, kind of gets the monkey off his back a little bit because people have been very disappointed with the way things have been going for this Tigers team, this Tigers program. But I think Gus Malzahn gets a very close win over a good Purdue team that is continuing to head in the right direction under Jeff Brom. Moving on to our first ranked versus ranked matchup, number 16 West Virginia and number 20 Syracuse in the Camping World Bowl down in Florida. And we'll start over here with West Virginia, obviously the major storyline. And one thing that's really contributing to our picking of Syracuse here is that Will Grier will be sitting out of this game. The star quarterback for the Mountaineers will not be playing. And as I've said it before, I extremely disagree with many of the players that choose to sit out. And I get it. I get the reason. They don't want to play in these bowl games, especially, as some say, a meaningless bowl game. They're not playing in the college football playoff. They're not playing in a New Year's Six bowl game. So why risk playing and getting hurt and ruining your draft stock, or maybe even risking a career-ending injury that would prevent you from playing at the next level? I do understand that, but at the same time, I do feel like you are letting your teammates down a little bit. But that's just my opinion. But Will Grier will be sitting out, as will Gary Jennings Jr., the leading wide receiver for the Mountaineers. So the offensive production for West Virginia is going to take a major hit in this bowl game, especially going up against a Syracuse squad that hasn't been to a bowl game since 2013 and is very, very hungry to get a bowl win here. They're going to be splitting time, Dana Holgorsen said, between Jack Allison and Trey Lowe III at the quarterback position. I expect Jack Allison to get more playing time than Lowe, but we'll have to wait and see. That's going to be a coach's decision. But the quarterback production is going to be a little shaky, I think, at times. So will they lean more on their star running back in Kennedy McCoy, who has over 700 yards on the ground this year and 7 touchdowns? That's something that we're going to really have to keep our eye on, but something that West Virginia has hopefully developed a game plan for when they lose their star quarterback in Grier. They average 42.3 points per game, allow just 26.5 on defense. And for the Big 12, many believe they don't seem to play defense. West Virginia was one of those teams that seemed like they did for the most part before losing those final 2 games of the year to Oklahoma and Oklahoma State, where they allowed over 40 points in each of those games. Moving over to Syracuse, like West Virginia, who averaged over 40 points per game, Syracuse has a very potent offense, averaging 40.8 points per game on the year and allowing just 27.8. So these teams very similar on both sides of the ball. But like West Virginia, they're going to be without a lot of their offensive stars. So this was going to be a prime opportunity for Syracuse to take advantage of that. But the Orange are going to be without some of their bigger defensive stars. They're going to be without Alton Robinson, McKinley Williams, and Antoine Cordy, who, yes, Cordy missed the final 2 games of the year, but still, he will still be out for this Camping World Bowl. So that's very disappointing and kind of a big blow for Syracuse. If had those defensive players been playing, maybe they could have taken advantage of West Virginia being without their star offensive players. So it kind of equals out, kind of cancels out on both sides of the ball there. Still should be a very competitive game down in Orlando. Syracuse, though, 9-3, 2 of those losses coming to Clemson by 4 and then getting blown out by Notre Dame. But that's half of your college football playoff right there. So a 9-3 record, nothing to be ashamed of. A very, very impressive campaign led by Dino Babers. This was the year that I said he needed to get to a bowl game. They were obviously showing signs of progress over his tenure here with the Orange, and he really got to that point this year, breaking through in the ACC, pretty much the second best record in the entire ACC, of course, behind Clemson. They're led by another star quarterback in Eric Dungey, who's completing over 60% of his passes on the year, has over 2,500 yards and 17 touchdowns. This is the Syracuse team, as I mentioned, that's very hungry, wants to get that bowl win. They haven't been to one since 2013. Dungey is a very underrated quarterback, in my opinion, and can actually do a little bit more on his legs than I think people give him credit for. More of a dual-threat quarterback than people give him credit for. I think the Orange, without West Virginia's star players on offense, especially without Grier, get a huge win and clinch a 10-win season in 2018. So major steps forward for Dino Babers and the Orange. In our final game of Friday night, the night before the college football playoff, number 24 Iowa State and number 13 Washington State facing off in the Alamo Bowl. Once again, starting over here with the Cyclones, who had another fantastic year under Matt Campbell, going to back-to-back bowl games. If you remember last year, they won that bowl game, the Liberty Bowl, over Memphis. Can they get another bowl win here against Washington State and the Cougars? First off, I want to mention their 3-headed monster on offense. Brock Purdy, who came in about midway through the season against Oklahoma State. You had Kyle Kempt, you had Zeb Noland at quarterback. Brock Purdy wasn't even really supposed to see any playing time this year at the quarterback position. Both go down with injury, and Brock Purdy comes in and leads them to 5 straight wins, including 7 wins in their last 8 games. So very, very impressive performance by the coaching staff, but more so by Brock Purdy, who's just a true freshman coming in to this season. So very impressive for them. And to come back and bounce back the way they did after that 1-3 start, leading them to 7 wins in their final 8 games. Extremely impressive for the Cyclones and Purdy. They have David Montgomery at running back, and I stressed him back in our predictions. I stressed him when we had him up here on the big board going in to the big Saturday games. He is a very, very dynamic running back and should have a very successful career, I believe, in the NFL. Over 1,000 yards on the ground this year. Very aggressive running back there. And then their top wide receiver, Hakeem Butler, 51 receptions, has 1,126 yards. So 1,126 yards on just 51 receptions and 9 touchdowns on the year. So he's obviously Purdy's go-to guy. So it's going to be important for Washington State to hone in on him and force Purdy to spread the ball out, or even have to rely a little bit more on David Montgomery in that ground game. Iowa State, as we mentioned with West Virginia, the Big 12 not being known for playing defense. Same with the Pac-12 and Washington State, not really known for playing defense, but Iowa State was once again one of those teams that did, allowing just 22.5 points per game and just 228.8 passing yards per game. So that's going to be kind of bad news for Gardner Minshew and something that the coaching staff is going to have to get ready for Washington State, who averages 380 passing yards per game. So almost about 150 more yards than the average that Iowa State gives up. So this is going to be really interesting to see Iowa State's defense going up against a very potent Washington State offense. And as we mentioned, Gardner Minshew, one of the better quarterbacks in the entire nation, he's not sitting out in this game despite being a senior, despite trying to make it into the NFL come April's NFL draft. He's just 120 yards away from setting the Washington State record for most passing yards in a season. He would break legendary Connor Holiday's record there, and he's just 238 yards away from setting the Pac-12 single-season record for passing yards in a year. He'd be breaking Jared Goff's record there, and Goff, as we all know, doing extremely well with the Los Angeles Rams. The biggest thing for Washington State, one benefit for them is that this game will be played inside. If you remember the last game, the season finale, Washington State technically still in the college football playoff hunt, certainly still in the Pac-12 title hunt. But they had a blizzard against Washington and really struggled on the offensive side of the ball. Both teams did, but Washington, who beat the Cougars in that blizzard, had a run game. They had Myles Gaskin, who rushed for, I think, 180 yards. Washington State does not have a run game. They average just 81.8 rushing yards per game. James Williams only has 549 yards on the ground this year. So if Iowa State, who shut down Will Grier early on in the year, beat them, I think, 30-14, held Will Grier to about 100 yards, who did pretty good containing Kyler Murray. I mean, they hung with Oklahoma early on in the year. If Iowa State can shut down Gardner Minshew in this very potent passing attack, they might be able to run away with this game because Washington State does not have a run game. So that's something that Mike Leach and his coaching staff is really going to have to be prepared for, and something that I know Matt Campbell and Iowa State is going to be prepared for going into this game. You've got to be able to shut down this passing game. But Washington State scores 38.3 points per game and allows just 23.1. I think the Cougars get a huge win here in the Alamo Bowl. That would clinch them an 11-win season and really break the inconsistency and the poor performances of bowl performances under Mike Leach. I think they've only won one bowl game under Mike Leach since he's taken the job in Pullman. This would be a major win for them, a great way to send some of these seniors out in what has been a very successful campaign for the Cougars this season. They might end up finishing in the top 10 come the final rankings of the year. So this should be a very exciting Alamo Bowl. I expect this game to have plenty of offense in it despite the two strong defenses. But I think in the end the Cougars get a huge win under Mike Leach and his air raid offense, sending Gardner Minshew out after his long year in Pullman with a key win and potentially some big-time records to go along with it. So we have 3 great bowl games for you this Friday. It's the day before the college football playoff. Coming Saturday, we will have the 3 predictions for those 3 bowl games before the college football playoff. We will have a completely separate video for the 2 college football playoff semifinal games between Clemson and Notre Dame, and then Alabama and Oklahoma. So make sure you keep your eyes out for both of those videos coming out very, very soon. And as always, make sure you go back to Twitter to check the spread picks for these 3 games, any prediction changes, and maybe some live feed and our opinions as the games are going on. So make sure you go check that out and help us get to 2,000 subscribers by January 7th. We slowly started to grow, got a couple extra subscribers here and there, but we'd like to hit that by January 7th, and we can do that through your guys' help by spreading the word through social media, telling your friends, your family, your coworkers, and any other possible way through there. We would really greatly appreciate that. And as always, we please request that you please continue to like, comment, and subscribe, and we will see you next time on The Gridiron Expert.